Emancipation of the African mind is a must. When we unnative ourselves as Africans, our oppressors, we pass laws that we speak to our unnativeness and deprive us land ownership. At the heart of the matter, who owns the land? Emancipation of all global Africans across borders is a must. But when we do it segregatedly, it has very limited effect. Here Jamaica fighting for reparation, Barbados this group is celebrating emancipation about African Canadians. When Caribana comes, I remember emancipation, and I remember my mission with a bunch of edutaining brothers and sisters. Lizzie Mahashi comes to mind, may her soul rest in peace. Kobina Akwa Harrison, Michael St. George, Joya Boache, Kofi Aka, Morenica Jones, and a host of many others when we went to Guyana. It was more like really in an African setting. It was a moment to remember. But emancipation Africans can only come when there is a global African focused organization that unapologetically deal with the African issues of the enslavement before, during, and after, and demand reparation on behalf of all of Africa. Not the blaming. You don't hear Jews blaming other Jews for Hitler's crime against them. Africans have been brainwashed to keep blaming and pointing fingers at one another. Oh, these Africans sold us. Do you know the mental trauma that our mothers, our fathers, our communities went through when the young, the strong were hijacked away from their villages? The suffering across that genocidal transatlantic slave trade, the impact that is still affecting us. Africans across the world, whether we understand, get it or not, we are still traumatized and mentally confused. And until we heal ourselves with our own recipe by going back to the root, emancipation is far from reaching. But we are still optimistic. Now, let me deal with when we return back to Africa as unnatives or with the eyes of the colonizers. The saga continues. Sierra Leone and Liberia comes to mind. When Thomas Peters led fellow Nova Scotians from Canada to go to Sierra Leone, majority unfortunately went as non-natives, non-Africans. But as one German reporter said, more British than the British themselves. They suffocated themselves and called their brothers and sisters natives or up-country people. Liberia, the same when the African Americans returned to Liberia. They made themselves more Americans than Americans themselves. They did the same that the oppressors did to them in Babylon, taking people and so-called Europeanizing them, taking African names and giving them European names. But how did the British tackle and confuse the unnative Africans that returned to Africa but not as Africans? They passed a legislation that prevented the return Africans who came to be known as Creoles as non-natives, and as such could not own land in the provinces. And now there is a legal challenge. Sometimes Africans do not know how to prioritize their issue. How can a group fighting to dispel such a dubious law not sue the Queen, Her Majesty, and the British government, but they sue the Sierra Leone government? I respectfully submit that it is a misguided legal action. And I am one that would demand, as President Bio is repealing most of these dubious laws in the country, from that confused libel law against journalistic promptness to the death penalty, that these laws that prevent fellow Africans, the Creoles, whether they deem themselves Creoles or Sierra Leoneans, be repealed immediately, lest the legal action, because it is not well thought about. The land issue. Now I challenge my Creole brothers and sisters who are truly Africans. They don't need to DNA. Whether they call themselves Nigerians, they are Africans. Whether they call themselves Yorubas, they are Africans. But one thing that tells you that they are typical Africans is that when our brothers and sisters returned, their favorite food was dry ball where they come up like. My grandmother used to say, their great-grandfathers used to tell them that their brothers and sisters who were enslaved will return one day, and food will be one of the things. So remember the trains, woo, coo, coo, coo. From Kailan to Freetown, dry ball was the unity. And all of us Africans have things in common that we can celebrate. And more importantly, I am no basher of a Creole, because my good Samaritan Savior right here in Babylon are two Creole brothers. So don't come ranting on me that I'm bashing. No. But stop making yourself a non-Sierra Leonean. Stop making yourself a non-African. And stop over-Creolizing yourself. Let us celebrate our Sierra Leoneans, our Africanness. That is emancipation as we move forward. You cannot demand land to be given to you. How many of the Creoles have traveled past Waterloo as Sierra Leoneans? I know countless of Creoles who are married to country people who have an owned land and productively live in the provinces. That law is despicable. It should be eliminated, and it's a disgrace that Africans continue to fight to get land ownership. And Africans are not investing, because every time we talk about investment, it's a bunch of our oppressors putting money together as investors to come and rubbish Africa. Emancipation can only come by us taking our economic freedom and stop being invited to Great Britain, France, or America. Money talks, and money makes the world go round. No money, no funny. Happy emancipation, and let us stop pushing one another. No African, I don't care how you call yourself, require a DNA to legitimize his or an Africanness. We are once an African and will always remain to be an African. And if Africa is not respected, no one African will ever be respected. So it is time for us to change our economic and educational system. Educational system that is African-centered. Read African authors, African poets. Eat African food. And let's make Africa the true oasis that God made. Emancipation can only come by people recognizing and telling their own stories. Let us tell our own stories and have our own institutions globally. Happy emancipation to everyone.